Well, I'm joined on the programme by Dr. Amir-Homayoun Javadi, who led this brain imaging analysis at UCL, and he joins me on the line. Hello, Doctor. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, I think many people have suspected that using a sat-nav dulls the brain to the point where they can't remember very simple directions to somewhere they ought to know the route to. But you've managed somehow to prove this. What were you looking at?
So we were looking at how participants can navigate in a virtual simulation of London Soho. And they had two different tasks. In one task, they had to actively navigate through the environment, and in the other task, we asked them to follow the directions that we gave them.
Yes.
And comparing between these two conditions, we found that when they are merely following the directions, a part of the hippocampus that is responsible for navigation somehow reduces its activity.
Yes.
Which shows that it somehow turns off the interest in navigation.
Yes. I mean, some people will say, well, so what? You don't need to be interested in it if a machine is telling you how to do it. That's the whole point. Instead of thinking, do I turn left, do I turn right, which is Dean Street, which is Greek Street, which is the one-way system, where does Wardour end, where does it start, how do I get to Old Compton Street? You can see I've spent quite a lot of time driving around Soho. I don't have a sat-nav, I didn't know how the thing works. So I have a fairly good idea of how to get around Soho. But you would see how and why, if you had a machine doing it for you, your brain might as well switch off, mightn't it?
Yes, that's true. So when we actively disengage from some cognitive tasks, the brain somehow disengage as well. And this can sometimes have bad consequences. So
what are the consequences of becoming, therefore, reliant on a sat-nav?
So one easy consequence that I can say is that you can't memorize the locations or the directions anymore, and you somehow lose the skill in navigating without sat-nav. So you rely on the sat-nav more and more, and it becomes somehow a habit.
Right. So you can understand why your synapses or the bits of your brain would switch off when the sat-nav is on. But you're saying if you turned it off, instead of kicking in as they used to, they've somehow been dulled or desensitized or deactivated, and they won't just snap into use again.
Exactly.
I see. So could it be permanent, the damage that you're doing to your brain?
Well, I don't call it a damage. It is more like a shift of skill between like you navigating or doing something else. So that part of the brain that is not involved in navigation anymore or less involved in navigation anymore might take on some other tasks. It depends on the demand that you put on the brain.
For example, what else might the brain do?
So for example, you might do some, Facebooking while you're driving, which is extremely bad as well. So you rely on...
I hope you're not doing that. That's illegal, dangerous, and really foolhardy and utterly stupid, isn't it? I hope nobody's doing that.
Well, that is true. But these are all stuff that people people sometimes do while they are navigating, or they might do some other stuff like talking on the phone, or these are all very bad things. And even without just without driving, if you are actively engaged in other tasks, I'm not totally sure what you can be engaged with while navigating, but you can somehow shift the skill between navigation to some other tasks.
But if you use sat-nav regularly, will you permanently impair your ability to remember a route to somewhere?
It gets worse and worse.
It gets worse and worse, and so you can't repair it by saying, okay, well, 2 days of every week I won't use my sat nav, or for 6 months I'm not going to use it anymore.
Oh no, the best is to keep it active constantly, because it's difficult to switch between using it and not using it. So yeah, it is better to keep it a routine and just use it constantly to keep it engaged all the time. Use your brain constantly rather than the sat nav. Exactly. So would you say you personally would not use the sat-nav because you'd be worried about what it would do to your brain? I usually avoid these kind of technologies. I usually look at the map and write it down on a piece of paper. The way that I write it, I say, okay, turn left to this street, turn right to that street. Or how many junctions I need to go to get to another junction that I need to turn. Well, people would say that's the equivalent of taking a piece of bread, lighting a fire from scratch by knocking a
couple of pieces of stone together to make a spark, and then holding it over the ensuing fire or flame with a piece of twig, when you could use a toaster. They'll say the whole point of sat-nav is that you shouldn't have to know how to navigate because sat-nav's been invented. So what is this doctor talking about? Why would you use a map, for goodness sake? You might as well look at the stars to get yourself around Soho.
That's totally, well, that's a somewhat good comparison, but your example is very mechanical, but navigation is very cognitive. Mm-hmm. So the more you use your brain, the more active you keep it, and it prevents it from a lot of, for example, diseases like dementia and Alzheimer, right? Which is very important in healthy aging.
You know how older people tend to say, gosh, when I was a child I could remember, 40 telephone numbers, We knew all the numbers of absolutely everyone, all our friends and all our family, and we all knew our numbers. And now nobody knows anybody's number. We just about struggle to remember our own telephone numbers. And we don't have to because they're listed and stored in our telephones. We don't need to know any numbers anymore. Is that a similar thing that does damage to our brains? It does it?
Yeah, so we use technology to store information, or we somehow download our memory to like smartphones or over internet, and the more we do that, the less we use our brain to store these kind of information, and it is somewhat damaging because we rely less on our own memory. These days, pretty much nobody memorizes any phone number. Sometimes people have mobiles for like years and they can't remember their own phone number.
No.
Because they have it in their phone. So these are somehow I can say bad consequences of like recent technologies that we have.
Okay, I've been asked by my producer to ask you this. She says, you know how people are absolutely obsessed by taking photographs of absolutely everything all the time, snapping and snapping away. We'll leave the selfie out of this, but just photographs in general, either starring yourself or starring your family members or starring your lunch or your dinner or your croissant or your shoes or whatever it is. She says, does that affect our ability to remember events? The fact that we're constantly taking pictures but not actually participating or engaging? It does.
It impairs our memory for like events because we are engaged with some other activities. So what we are thinking at that time is, okay, I take it, how best I can take it, where I can post it, and possibly in some cases people wait for other people comments, see how they react. So all these extra like cognitive demands that go around that event somehow reduce the importance of the actual event.
Okay, well, what is the punchline of this story? What are you doing that we should copy? Tell us what we should do.
Oh, well, I use my old 12-year-old Nokia right now, which doesn't have camera, it doesn't have any internet connection or anything. I use technology to the extent that is needed. And that is my suggestion to everybody, to just use the technology in a correct way, not to be absorbed too much by, selfies and...
Doctor, I should tell you this, we are telephone twins, you and I.
Oh, really?
Yes. My phone costs £25 and it works beautifully. It won't boil you an egg. It won't darn your socks. It's got nothing to do with the internet. You can't take a photograph. Why the hell would you want to? And I don't want to. I'm not online. I've never used a sat-nav. I've got no idea how it would work. If I get lost, I stick my head out of the window and ask somebody where I'm supposed to be going. And if I can't find it, I go back home again and go somewhere else. That's it. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. If you think that's a joke, it's not. It's totally true. I've done that many times, as has my father. That's hereditary.